Hey listeners, it's Kara, your host. After 176 amazing episodes and hundreds of book recommendations, I wanted to make it a little bit easier for you to find your next great read. The Bookish Lights Roadmap is your guide to all 175 podcast episodes, sorted by genre so you can quickly find the stories that fit your reading mood. From picture books to adult novels and everything in between, it's the perfect way to explore past episodes and discover new favorites. You can find your copy of the Bookish Lights Roadmap at www.bookishlights.com/read/roadmap, or just click the link in the show notes. Hi, I'm Kara Infante, and this is Bookish Flights, a podcast where we tell our stories through our favorite books. Each episode features a bookish guest where we will talk about reading, life, and the seasons we're in, all through a thoughtfully paired book flight of recommendations for you. If you're looking for meaningful book recommendations and a space to slow down, you're in the right place. Today's guest is Jessica Guerrieri. She is an award-winning novelist and essayist whose literary fiction explores the complexities of motherhood, identity, family, and the ways our past continues to shape us. She is the author of Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, winner of the 2023 Maurice Prize for Fiction, and her newest novel, Both Can Be True. Beyond her fiction, Jessica's essays have appeared in People, HuffPost, and Writer's Digest. And as someone with more than 13 years of sobriety, she is also a passionate voice in the sobriety and mental health communities. Jessica lives in Davis, California with her family and what she describes as a small parade of pets. Welcome to the show, Jessica.
Yay, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, we connected. Well, we'll probably get to this, but I feel like we connected over motherhood and sobriety and addiction and just digging into your novels, and we'll talk about that. But I just felt like compelled we had to get you on the show. So I'm so glad you're here.
I'm so thrilled you reached out, and I'm such a fan of what you do, and I'm honored to be here.
Yeah, well, I feel like we are so much more than these bios. So let's start with telling us a little bit about who you are.
Sure. Yeah. So I am a proud sober mom. I have 3 daughters, and I live in Davis, California, like you said, with my wonderful husband of 15 years. And I have a passion for special education. I was, before anything else, I became a special ed teacher.
Okay.
And I did that before I became a mom, and absolutely just fell in love with the neurodivergent community. When I became a mom, I needed to sort of step away in order to give my full focus to my children. I was incredibly overwhelmed by motherhood. I had postpartum depression for my first 2 that were only 20 months apart. And so I actually used writing as my go-to sort of form of escapism because I was newly sober, a new mom, sort of new in an isolation feeling because my friends groups were different, because I wasn't drinking. I was, in mom groups now, and I was like, some of the mom groups were like, oh, we'll drink and we'll do, we'll go wine tasting with our kids. And I was like, not really strong enough in my sobriety for that. Yeah. So writing became my ultimate escape, in order to capture sort of the feelings that I was having. And as a graduate from UC Davis with a creative writing emphasis, my dream was always to be a writer.
Okay.
And then motherhood happened, and it just kept getting pushed off. And also it's one of those like pipe dream things where like, I'm going to write a book, and like, yay. And everybody's like, good for you. But then the pandemic hit, and I actually got a group of friends together. And by together, I mean, like, we sat in like the Target parking lot, 6 feet apart, trunks open, and we started this like group therapy session for moms. And it was based on sort of my, like, it was sort of like my recovery group, but like nobody was sober. It was just like we were all moms and we were in the pandemic, like, what is happening?
And there's no outlet anywhere.
And there's no outlet. And, we'd all be crying, but like nobody could hug each other. And like we bring our food and like, had flashlights. And so I was like, 2020 is the worst year ever.
Yeah.
And we were in California, so there was fires. So some days we couldn't be outside. And I said, something good has to come out of this year. And so we each picked goals for ourselves. And one of my friends' goals was like to divorce her husband. Like she had been meaning to, he was unfaithful, and she did, right? But it's like pulling the trigger.
Yeah.
Another one lost like 60 pounds, and I decided to write a book. And so I committed to that. And that is how I wrote Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea.
I think there's something to be said about how our time is spent, especially in motherhood, because our time is so finite in a day.
Okay.
And, in my mind, I'm always like, my priority is my kids, right? Like that's 100% what I want to give. But then you get to comparing yourselves to others in your field and you're like, well, they're doing so much. And I'm like, but wait, it comes at the cost of time with my kids, which was my whole choice of staying home with my kids to begin with.
Correct. Correct.
So giving yourself permission to do something like writing your book is huge.
Right.
In
Yes.
motherhood.
Yes. And that encompasses the theme of both of my books, actually, of like, again, giving yourself permission to be something outside of a mother. We're not necessarily encouraged in our society, like to seek outside, not validation, but just outside identity. Because once you become a mother, it's like, nope, you are first and foremost a mother, which, yes, true and wonderful, all the things, but you're also allowed to sort of mourn your past identity or your free identity. And in Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, my protagonist, Leah, is, loosely based on myself. She's sort of like my spirit animal, but she, or like my, spirit person. And she is a surfer, and she accidentally becomes pregnant, and sort of motherhood chooses her. But she wants to be the free spirit still. And in a lot of ways, I think women can identify with that. Sometimes we look around and we're like, what have we done? Right? How did we get here?
Yeah, I also think there's that bit of it's really hard to ask for help, or even per se to your spouse, right? Like my husband works all day, every day, and I'm like, like, sorry, can I go put the kids on you? Like there's times I'm like, I know you're tired too. But there's also, you come to realize like you have to prioritize yourself, and that, as selfish as that may sound, and how we're told not to be that. I mean, there's just so many conflicting emotions.
Messaging, right?
Yeah,
it's very confusing, but also like, what would you tell your children, and what do you want to model for them? And so I love the question of like, would you want this role for your children, or would you want this relationship for your children? You can do that in marriage, you can do that in familial relationships, and you can always hold yourself to that standard and say like, well, would I want this for my children? And that's actually the bar that like, I don't know who was the first person to say it. I definitely can't take credit for it, but I was like, no, that is really powerful to think about. And so after the pandemic, we went, when I celebrated 10 years of sobriety, me and the same group of women, we scheduled like a trip to Mexico to celebrate my 10 years of sobriety. And it was the first time any of us were getting away from our kids at all, right? Some of us had like newer babies. And then between us, I think we had 22 children.
Wow.
And so the partners were stepping up for us, but we were like, this feels really important for us. And of course, we were privileged and lucky to be able to financially do it, to be able to do all the things. But at the same time, we were like, I think we'll come back better moms because we will be rested. We will show up as our true self. And if I think about it, I would want that for all of my daughters. I would want them to step away, feel connected to their friends who help give them life and support, and do something that is just for her, and just for her to feel like her own person that isn't necessarily always a mother, always a wife. And so that became actually the foundation of my second book.
Yeah. It has me thinking of, we try to teach our kids emotional outlets when they're younger. And that's probably what we're relearning as an adult. Like we still need emotional outlets, and whether that's writing or getting together with a group of friends in the Target parking lot or whatever that may be,
1,000%.
you still need it.
Right. And we're not very good at it, right? Like,
which is why we're still
because
learning.
society doesn't like allow for it, right?
Yeah.
And what is our outlet? Our outlet, I think, is our phones, right? Our outlet is like doom scrolling. That's what it's become. And I don't know about you, but it becomes like, if I have my phone in my hand, it turns into like, oh, I need to add something to the Target shopping list. Oh, wait, okay, so I did that. Okay, so now I need to check that email. And it's not actually time for me. It becomes more things for me to do to contribute to the family. And I'm like,
and I don't feel recharged at all after I've sat there.
no, and I know all the moms feel that way. And like, it's having that thing that makes you feel recharged, like you said, is the key.
Yeah. I had a friend come on the show and he talked about this and kind of keeping a journal. And at the end of the day, write down 3 things that drained your energy and 3 things that kind of filled you up, for a better way of saying it. And then just track that over a few months. And then you can start to see what habits are really hurting you and what ones are actually helping you. And because I think it can be hard to see, because you're just going through the motions a lot. Yeah. And you're in it. And so just keeping a journal, another thing to do, but it's for you.
I was like, would you resent doing that list at the end of it? But it would be for your benefit for sure. But really, I mean, what you're saying is mindfulness, right? Like just intentionality, which
being aware
so lacking.
Yeah.
Right. But again, that's what we would want for our own children, right? I would want them to be present and aware. And actually, I think that is one of the benefits of the way in which we raise our children now, is they have such a better awareness of their own feelings as it relates to needs. And like, I mean, my daughter the other day, the idea that I had no idea what anxiety was when I was a kid, right? Yeah. And now they have that movie, the cartoon movie where they have all the emotions and everything.
Yeah, Inside Out.
Inside Out. And when I went to go see that with my daughter, she was like, oh my gosh, like I am anxiety. Like I relate to that so much. And like, I didn't have the words for that as a kid. And so now it's like, we give them all these tools to like put in their like metaphorical tool belt of like, okay, well, when I feel anxious, I journal. When I feel anxious, I get out my art kit. I walk the dogs. I do these things. And like, we still have to do that as an adult. I'm like, when I get anxious, I'm like, let me get out my journal.
Yeah.
And write. And sometimes it's like, feels childlike, but it's like, that's the only thing that I know truly helps.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. Well, you've already mentioned it. Your second book is out now. Both Can Be True. And for listeners that maybe haven't had a chance to pick it up yet, can you tell them a little bit about it?
Yeah, Both Can Be True is about 2 sisters. And so it's written in dual perspective. And it's about, basically, it's the experience of these 2 sisters. They've grown up in the same house, but they've had very different interpretations of their seemingly traumatic childhood. They lost their mother early to cancer. And so navigating that journey sort of separated them emotionally when they used to be very close. And then they live in the same community now that they're adults raising their kids. And they were hopeful that motherhood was going to be the thing that sort of brought them together. But one of the sisters, the older one, is raising a newly identified neurodivergent child who has autism. And that wasn't the younger sister's experience, who happens to be 10 years sober. And so while they're sort of figuring out their place, a woman goes missing in their community that they both know. And in the search for her, they have to sort of dig through their traumatic childhood. And it's the question of whether or not this woman will be found, but also how they will be found together. And can this bring them back together as sisters?
Oh, I love it. It sounds so good.
And if you're an audiobook person, I always pitch this, because if you're an audiobook person, truly our audiobook narrators are Mia Hutchinson Shaw, who actually I did Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea, and was so spectacular. I asked her to come back. She reads for Frankie, one of the protagonists.
Okay.
And then Helen Laser is also in there, and she's just done a bunch of different things. Rebecca Loman is the voice of Mare, and she just read for Yesteryear, which is obviously like one of the books of the year. And that's a phenomenal book as well. But she is so engaging and all of the things that I just am so proud of what they did with that. It's so fun to like have it in your ears and be like, oh, I wrote this, and this is their interpretation of it. It's wild.
Yeah. Is it a different experience for you? I imagine, right? Because being the writer, you're one thing, but then when someone else is portraying it,
honestly, it's very out of body in like in a non drug induced sort of way. Like I always like joke that like I'm so used to out of body being like, I'm like high or drunk or something when back in the day. And this is the most the best version of that. I actually took a trip to Half Moon Bay, which is where Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea takes place. It's where we used to go as children every weekend. We called it Over the Hill.
Okay.
And I took my family the summer or right before, so it would have been spring break, right before the book came out in May of 2025. And we did like a Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea tour of all the places that are in the book. And it was the first time that my husband was reading the book, which I was like, wow, honey, a little late. Like it's already coming out. Like I hope all these scenes that are based on you and I are okay with you.
Yeah.
I've given him plenty of time, but engineers have a little bit different literary timeline.
Yeah. And is your husband a reader?
No. Not
mine isn't either. So I'm like, this would be my house as well.
Business sense, like he'll listen to, like I was really proud, like his company recommend like Brene Brown and stuff. And I was like, oh, I'm like, that's awesome.
Yeah, wow.
Good. Like Dare to Lead, like amazing. I love this, especially because it's mostly a company there's a lot of men because it's an engineering company. And anyways, so I was like, this is amazing. But no, he's not a sit down, especially not like book club literary fiction.
Yeah.
But because it's based so heavily on our experience, I was like, no, it's really important that you read it. And of course he wanted to support me, but he had the book and he was like reading it as we were like sitting on the beach as a family. And that was a trip for me. But one of the other things is right as we arrived, my editors emailed me and they're like, oh, here are some sample narrators worth considering, and they're reading a chapter for you. So I was listening to the auditions while I was in Half Moon Bay, literally like at the tree tunnels, which are like a part of the book and a very important part of the book. And I was sitting, like, seriously, I had one in my ear. I had my family out in front of me, like on the tide pools. And I was like listening to my own words in my ear being read by someone else. And I was like, I don't know what to do with this. It was just, especially as a sober person, I have to tell you, it was like one of the top moments of my life of like,
that's what I was just thinking.
I feel present. I am here. Look at what I did. Look at all of the things I'm experiencing. And how lucky am I? So I did share
and
that
being
because
sober, you felt 100% of it, right? I mean, like you were fully
and I felt
present.
100%.
Yeah.
Yes. And I felt the joy, like the true joy. That's the thing about recovery that you feel all the emotions, but you're numbing out the bad in the drinking, right? Or so you think you are, but you're also numbing out the good. Everything is just like a blur. And then when you become sober, it's like, you feel the hard really bad, but you feel the good in a way that you were meant to, right? The true form of it. And so I just like, anytime there are moments like that, I just store it in my brain and I'm like, yes, go back to that. If there's a hard, day of challenging recovery, I'm like, no, remember when I watched my kids on the rocks at the beach in Half Moon Bay? Remember that? And I'm like, that was because I was sober.
Yeah. And your kids see that too, right? I think that's so important.
Absolutely.
With addiction and sobriety being such themes in your work, what do you hope those type of conversations will open up for your readers?
Yeah, I was very intentional when we were pitching this book that it was in the heart and the right around the pandemic, which I feel like there was this explosion of mommy wine culture, of this excuse that like it's 5 o'clock everywhere. Uh, mom and the narrative really is moms need alcohol in order to cope with the stressors of motherhood. And if you go further than that, it's because the perceived notion is that moms are weak. But there is no other two ways about it if you really look for it. There is no daddy, like daddy needs a beer because he's worked so hard like with the kids all day. That
Unless
isn't
you
a
know that
narrative.
lifestyle, right? I mean, like the
Right,
dads that cracking open a
right.
beer when they get home, but yeah, it's
Which
not
true,
portrayed.
but
Yeah.
the media isn't advertising that. Like
Yeah.
I went into like Trader Joe's and it was like back to school mom shopping. And I was like, first of all, why is only the mom shopping? And it had like a big arrow in the wine section and it was like back to school. And it was like, okay, well, I hate that. I hate
Yeah.
that narrative for us. But I felt like there was this opportunity in fiction where women are already together. They're getting together talking about books. I wanted to write a book that would cause feelings, cause emotions, cause opinions, which is what book club fiction is. So why wouldn't I talk about and really show the lived experience of someone who played the tape all the way out of drinking to its end point? Because we've seen a lot of narratives of, unfortunately, it's usually villainized, right? It's like the bad drug dealer who just had a hard life, and you see them struggling, but you don't see necessarily redemption as it occurs for a mother. And so I was really interested in sort of picking that apart and showing it based on my lived experience to invoke the empathy that I think is necessary in our society, to see that people aren't choosing addiction over their family.
Yeah.
And that's very complicated because it feels that way. Yeah. And rightly so, right? And so I think books are a great way to explore the hard and do it safely. And so that's why I wanted to incorporate that into fiction.
Well, and I think through fiction, it's not probing as hard, where if you were to have a direct conversation about a hard topic, a lot of people shut down, right? Or they kind of tune it out, or they gloss it over, or they dismiss it because it's uncomfortable and they don't want to talk about it. Where when you're in fiction, you're kind of slowly rolling through the story and you're like meandering into the hard, and you're seeing that. And I think it just allows you, like you said, with the empathy, but just expands your worldview and your understanding, because you're that much more open to hearing it than as opposed to when it's just pushed right into the hard topic.
Well, and also think about it too. One of the things I think is so great is a lot of people have come up to me after speaking events or just online, they've DM'd me and they're like, hey, if I were to buy your books as like a gift for someone that I'm really worried about, would they be like offended? Which literally, I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten that question. And I was like, no, they wouldn't be offended.
How do you tell them they have a problem?
Right. Because that's not at all what you're doing. You're giving them a book that's amazing, right? And quality, but all the things, obviously. But you're not giving them a self-help book on addiction recovery. You're not doing an intervention. You might be helping them plant a seed of hope that is sort of a roundabout way of coming at something, helping with understanding, or they don't see it at all, right? Or they're just like, oh, I've had people be like, I didn't really even know your book was about alcoholism. I thought it was about the pressures of motherhood. And I was like, great, perfect. I'm glad that's your interpretation of it, because that's also true.
Yeah. I was also thinking, when you were talking about how it's portrayed in the media, a lot of times I think it's also portrayed as death, right? Like, what is the end game, quote unquote, of drinking or the drug use is death at the end, where in this instance, it's the end of, but still having a life after.
Yes. And also, what does in both can be true, I very much wanted to show the lived experience of somebody who just does recovery on the day to day. Because yes, I've made it my life's purpose and my messaging, but that isn't necessarily always the case, right? You don't have to go around like waving a flag, like I'm sober, like, oh, don't bring me the wine list. I'm sober. Some people don't live like that, and that's totally fine. I'm super obnoxious about it because I'm proud. And also I think it opens up the door for advocacy and limits shame. But other people just live their life and they're like, oh, I go to a wedding and I order a Diet Coke and like nobody cares. Nobody asks me why. It's not a big deal. But we don't show sort of the mental gymnastics that might be happening with that person behind the scene, because it's always there. There's always something that brings it to your attention. They don't show the lived experience of someone who just is living, not drinking. And that also doesn't have to look like an advocate for addiction recovery. It can just be a regular person who also just chooses not to drink. And I think a lot of times when we're picking up books, especially like women's books, we don't notice it as much, but I notice it constantly. It's like they always have wine in their hand. They're always opening a bottle of wine. If it's a group of friends, they're sharing a bottle of wine. And you'll see that in every single Netflix miniseries, Hulu, HBO. They're having a problem and they're pounding shots. Same thing in a lot of literature. And that's fine. I'm not judging it. I read lots of books and watch a lot of series with that in it, and it's fine. It doesn't bother me. But can we also represent the other part of the population that isn't their go-to, and what does that look like? Because
it seems like it's a societal norm, right? And then when you tell people you're not that, I think it's like it's interesting, right? You were saying the mental gymnastics of being sober, and it's because I feel like people feel strange when I tell them, oh, no, I don't. Like if they'll offer, and I'm like, oh, no, I don't drink. And I feel like it makes them feel like, well, A, should I not drink around you? B, like, do you mind if I have a drink? Like, C, like there's so many questions, especially if it's a newer friend. And I'm like, I don't care that you drink.
Yeah, like, it's not my choice,
like, but it's very off-putting for people when you don't do the same thing.
Oh, I was so terrified of sober people in my life, and I actively avoided them when I was in active addiction. Like, they were the scariest people in the room to me. But also, the other thing that would happen is I would become like consumed by needing to understand why they weren't drinking. And like, I would get drunk and find them at a party and just be like, but like, why aren't you drinking? Okay, but like, I mean, tell me more, but don't tell me more. And just this like toe in the water curiosity. And that's the really amazing thing about books too, is that it's voyeuristic intentionally to be like, wait, I want to know more about this. And it's like, I'm reading about it in my own secret world, so I can internalize it however I need to. And the great thing about my characters is because they're based on my real life experience, that is what it feels like for a lot of people. Like when you're on the ride and you can't get off the ride, and not a lot of people can articulate that. And I'm like, and I've lived through it. So that to me feels like a really purposeful gift that I want to share, not only to the recovery community, the people who are struggling, but also the people who love people that are struggling, for the empathy piece.
Yeah, well, maybe this might already answer one of my favorite questions to ask is, what is your wish for readers? What do you hope they'll take away from Both Can Be True?
For Both Can Be True, really, there's a lot of hard in it, and there's exploration. There's some heavy themes. I always do trigger warnings in the beginning. But one of the themes besides addiction, is sexual assault, sexual violence against women. That is a topic that's really important to me. I'm a survivor myself, and the statistics are harrowing and horrible, and it's all over the news all the time. And I was trying to come up with, okay, well, what is the solution, right? Because like, I'm not gonna solve it. Like, I'm not going to solve the world's problems. But what do I know to work in my own life? And for me, the answer is a sense of community, a sense of being around other women that are survivors, that are in recovery, that have walked in my shoes or in our shoes. Hearing from them and feeling less alone is where the power is. And so, if you can take away anything from both can be true, it's that not all hope is lost because we still have access to that community. And that is where the answers lie. It doesn't have to be AA, but AA is very much featured in this book. It doesn't have to be a 12-step program. It doesn't have to be group therapy. It can be women in a parking lot in Target. It can be your sister. It can be, your found family. But as long as you're seeking support through people who have been there, then not all hope is ever lost.
Yeah. And I think there's so much that can be said when you don't have to explain everything, right? When you're amongst the community who understands. So
it makes, yes. And I share this too, how I was assaulted in college, and the first recovery group that I was ever a part of before I started drinking, and that was a very strong component of why I started drinking heavily to cope with my attack. I joined a women's survivor group, and we got really close, and everybody was so welcoming and loving and supportive. And that was my first experience of a therapeutic group of any kind. And then later on in my life, I discovered 12-step, and I specifically navigated myself towards women's groups for obvious reasons, but I felt very empowered by them. And so that is like sort of the origin of how that started. But I'll never forget those women's stories. I'll never forget their vulnerability and what they shared that made me feel safe to do the same. And that's all I could ever hope, is that my vulnerability will breed vulnerability for other people for healing, ultimately, is our goal.
Yeah. And I was going to ask too about, if there's someone listening that feels like maybe they want to start moving that way. It's, you've recommended quite a few programs, but would there be any advice you would have for them to take the next step today?
The thing that I think too is like, I feel really lucky that I'm an extrovert. I love people. I actually feel my sense of like purpose through other people and community, but not all people feel that way. I'm married to an engineer, and he's like, oh gosh, we have to go be around people now. And I'm just like, okay, honey, like, I'm so sorry. That's, and that's not a character flaw. That's just his personality preference. And I've got a few introverted kids and a few extroverted kids. And I'm like, so if community to you is not the answer, it doesn't have to be sought through like a physical meeting up, right? There are so many virtual opportunities now. And not just that, books. Like, this is why books exist, because you can escape inside them and find healing within them. And I often say to people, like, that is such a good gateway into sort of testing the waters. Like, I was really lucky that I was open to stepping into those rooms and being like, yeah, hi, I'm an alcoholic. Like, hi, I'm a survivor. That's very rare. Not a lot of people want to do that. And I 100% appreciate that. But there are so many tools and resources online, therapeutic ones, free resources. If you look, there's just endless amounts. They have Facebook groups and, free opportunities through, I know like NAMI mental health organizations, 12-step programs, they exist, and they are tailored to people, even neurodivergent people who aren't, comfortable with certain things as well. And they all exist. You have to ask for help, and you have to seek it. And then that's the hardest part, truly, often is that getting over that hurdle and that fear, because once you're there, that's where the healing begins too.
Yeah. Well, and that is maybe one good thing about our phones, right? We can do so much research from our phones and find access to
so true. Yes. And it's I love the like outpouring of support. I literally, as I was coming onto this, I got a message from someone who was in my recovery group um, 15 years ago, or at the very beginning of my journey. And she just reached out and she's like, I just saw your book and I'm going to get it. And I just want to tell you, like, I've relapsed and I had 9 years and now I'm hiding my drinking again. And I was like, oh, I'm about to do this, but like, I can, like, I'll hop on a call with you afterwards and like, let's just talk. Like, thanks for
Yeah.
sharing that with me. Um, oh, Junior, like she moved recently. I'm like, oh, should we look up resources that are in your area? Like, I'll do that on the phone with you because that is her. If she reached out to me to say this, she's asking for help.
Yeah.
She's asking for community.
Saying it out loud. Yeah.
Yes. And so I'm like, I will never let that go. And I take that very seriously because I've done it to other women and they've received it on the other side. And like, I think that's where the magic is in all of this. And that's what I try and portray in my books of like how women are truly we're saving each other.
Yeah.
And that, for as hard and dark as the world is, that brings me a lot of peace and a lot of hope that I know that exists still.
Yeah. Well, I think that's kind of the perfect segue to move over to who you are as a reader. Speaking of digging into books and all of that, I ask all guests to bring 3 books in the form of a book flight. Can you tell us how you chose these books?
Yes. Okay. So the first one is obviously mine, and it's both can be true, and we've already talked about that.
Yeah.
But I got very interested, especially as my book was coming out, in seeking, when you're a writer, you look for things that are called like comps, and that's like comparable titles. They have it for houses, right? If you're going to put your house on the market, they're like, it's like this, but it's different in this way. But like they could all sort of be in a family together. And I was so curious about the way in which addiction, inherited family trauma, is written about, especially in like women's book club fiction. And so one of the first books that came to me via another person who does a podcast called Amy Clark, and it's called The Mom Gang. And she had me on, and I was describing Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
Because that was the only book that I was out at the time. And she was like, have you read Sarah Damoff's The Bright Year? Or The Bright Years? And I said, no, I haven't, but I was seeing it everywhere. And it came out like a few months before my book. And she's like, what's so funny is originally Between the Devil and the Deep Blue Sea was written in 3 perspectives. When I pitched it first, it was written from perspectives of the mother-in-law, Leah, who is the ultimate protagonist, and then the sister-in-law, Amy. And she's like, you would be so interested in this book because it explores alcoholism in its entirety, but it's from the perspective of an entire family, meaning the daughter, the dad who has alcoholism, and then the mom. And I was like, oh, sold. Like, immediately listened to it, immediately read it, fell in love with the characters. And I was like, I have to reach out to Sarah, the author, because I was like, I love any person that is able to depict addiction with so much empathy and so much heart. And that's exactly what she did.
Yeah.
And so I reached out to her, and she told me about her, background in social work and how that alcoholism and addiction is a huge part of social work. She didn't necessarily have someone in like her immediate family that was touched by alcoholism, like say in the way that I was.
Yeah.
But she was able to make it human. And so I love the way she like interweaves what we hold on to, and the inheritance of addiction in a way. Is so powerful, so beautifully written. And so that's my first choice.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that because I read this book and I also had to reach out to Sarah. Like there's something that's so compelling about her work. And I just reached out to her in a little bit of a personal message to let her know my story and alcoholism in my family. And it was, so there's something about her writing that drew us both to like, we have to reach out to her. Like,
well, and that's such a compliment, honestly, when that happens. and like that'll happen to me, and I keep them in my messaging folder of like when I go back to like remember my purpose of like what I'm doing. I'm not doing it to be a New York Times bestseller, although that would be nice. I'm doing it to feel that connection with other people. But truly, she did it again in The Burning Side, which
I
is her
haven't read it
second book
yet.
that
Yeah.
came out, and very similar way in which she's able to write just very human characters that you feel seen in. And I just, yeah, the way she writes is so beautiful, and I just adore her as a person too. She has such a good heart, and it's been really fun to sort of do author to author conversation with her of just sort of like, this is kind of a wild, strange ride, and nobody else really gets it, but other authors. So that's been really fun.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, what's the last book of the book flight?
The last book is The Road to Tender Hearts, and this one is by Annie Hartnett. So when I read this book, again, I had to do it on Audible. It's all I can do right now. I'm like, I miss reading so much, but it's hard.
Life.
It's really, really hard. And at night, I fall asleep to audiobooks, and that's how I get in my pages. You know, I'll put myself to bed early, and I'll just be like in my happy place, like with my Audible, and like my dog's next to me, and I'm just like, shh.
Yeah.
And so when I listened to The Road to Tender Hearts, so I fell in love with the protagonist, which is rare because it is from the perspective of an older man. And I really prefer female narrators, right?
Yeah.
I'll just be honest. So genuinely, the voice of the main character in this is the voice of my grandfather who passed away, and I was very close with.
Okay.
To the point of the accent is similar. I sent it to my dad, and my dad was like, maybe okay, and I was like, shh, don't ruin this for me. Like this feels like other realm. So there's something about it. It feels really comforting to me, even though the story itself, it's like a quirky road trip where like a cast of characters, including Pancakes, who I actually reached out to Annie and asked if I could recreate Pancakes as a character. Uh, in her book, Pancakes is a cat that can predict death.
Yeah.
And in mine, Pancakes is a Cocker Spaniel therapy dog for Lily, who is on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
And she was like, oh my gosh, yes, like Pancake live forever. I just thought the name of it was such a cute name for a pet. And I'm a huge pet person, as is my bio.
Yeah.
And so that was also sort of my like way of like sneaking into her DMs and just being like, I adore you. Like your writing is so beautiful. And she was so kind. But I love the way she mixes like dark humor. There is very heavy topics, including child loss, which is a really hard topic to write about. And she handles it in just such a tender way.
Yeah.
And so what was amazing too is she blurbed my second novel, Both Can Be True, which was again so generous. When authors do that, that is them volunteering their time. They don't get paid for it. It's a huge ask.
Yeah.
So she blurbed my second novel, and she recommended my novel in People magazine. They recently did an article of asking what authors' favorite books of 2026 were, and she picked mine.
That's amazing.
Which is so awesome. And so, of course, I would pick hers for the flight, but it also represents generational trauma. The main character struggles with alcoholism, and you get to see his journey of addiction and what it has done, and also the root trauma that sort of caused the beginning for him to get to where he was.
Yeah.
But you have so much compassion for him and love throughout the story, and it just builds over time. And so like her characterization is just like gorgeous.
Yeah. I also loved this book. Listeners, if you want to hear where all the characters came from, actually, she came on episode 199. We have a book club with the podcast. And so she
Yeah,
came on. We read this book for book club. She came on and joined us, and she tells us kind of where the genesis of all of these characters are. So
the
you
best.
could dig in a little bit more to the novel as well if you loved it.
Yeah. Oh, it's
As
so
much as
good.
we did, because we also
Yes,
loved it. Yeah.
yes. It's one of those ones too that like I know she's doing a book tour right now, where she just goes and meets like everybody all over the place, and like her book has become like a phenomenon because it didn't necessarily start out as like a New York Times bestseller, and like this is her second book,
Yeah.
and people just fall in love with it, and it's like it's almost like a guaranteed. So I mean, sort of like the Bright Years, like if you want a book that you're like, no, you will like this. Like I don't
Yeah.
care what your interests are, this will hit for you. And what I've accepted in my author journey is like, my books are not like that. They are specific in their messaging and their target audience, and it won't necessarily be a universal love. And so maybe one day I'll write that. But
Yeah.
I have such admiration for their ability to hit on really hard things and still be like universally
Appeal. Yeah. To all.
appeal. It's quite a gift.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for bringing those books with you. How I love to end our show is with a speed round of questions that you can answer really quick. Where is your favorite place to read?
In my bed with my
Okay.
dogs.
What is one writing snack or drink that you can't live without?
Writing snack or drink. I love the peanut butter pretzels from Trader Joe's.
It's so good. It's a hit in our house too.
So good.
What's
So
one
good.
word that you would use to describe both can be true?
Community.
Okay. Lastly, what are you reading next?
I am so excited to read Nothing Hurt and Everything Was Beautiful. I want to say, I'm not going to know who it's by offhand. It's his debut.
Okay. We can include it in the
It's
show
from the
notes.
perspective of, yes, it's from the perspective of death.
Okay.
It's supposed to be really gut-wrenching, which I love. I love going there. And I've just heard nothing but incredible things. I'm going to Nashville to do a TEDx talk and also do a book event. And I'm like, I have it. I'm like ready to go. And it's like going to inspire me for my writing for my fourth book. And I can't wait. So Nothing Hurt and Everything Was Beautiful, I believe is what it's called. But that's my
Okay.
most fun.
Wonderful. Well, I hope you have a great trip, and thank you so much for coming on the show with me this morning.
Yay, my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today with Jessica Guerrieri. Her book flight features books that talk about addiction and alcoholism. We'd love to hear what other books you've enjoyed in this theme at bookishflights.com. If you enjoyed the show, please head over to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Your review not only helps the show, but it also helps the podcast to reach others. Make sure you are subscribed on Apple Podcasts or Spotify to make sure you will not miss an episode. That's it for today. Thank you so much for listening. As Emma Thompson said, I think books are like people in the sense that they'll turn up in your life when you most need them. Cheers to you, dear readers. Until next time.